What does it actually feel like to hold the NBA MVP trophy? Ask anyone on the street and they'll tell you the same thing. It means you're the greatest. It means the entire league looked at every single player and pointed at you. It's the highest individual honor the sport has to offer. But what if that trophy came with a hidden invoice? One that nobody talks about, nobody advertises, and almost nobody sees coming until it's too late? What if chasing that award was quietly draining players not just of their health, but of generational wealth? There's a silent war happening inside this NBA season, not between players, not between franchises, but between the league's biggest stars and a single number that is reshaping what it means to be the best player in basketball. The promise of a trophy is costing more than anyone imagined, and today we're pulling back the curtain on exactly how this works. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand this, you'll never watch an MVP race the same way again. To understand the trap, you need to understand the rule first. The NBA introduced a straightforward eligibility requirement to be considered for individual awards: MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, Sixth Man of the Year, and critically, all NBA selections. A player must appear in at least 65 of the 82 regular season games, and not just show up, but he needs to log a minimum of 20 minutes in each of those appearances. 65 games, 20 minutes each. On paper, it sounds more than fair. The league's official explanation was clear. This was a direct response to load management. If you haven't heard the term, load management is when teams deliberately sit healthy players during regular season games to keep them fresh for the playoffs. Fully healthy athletes in their prime, watching from the bench in street clothes. And it became a real problem. Fans were spending hundreds of dollars on tickets to watch their favorite stars, only to walk into an arena and find out that LeBron, Kawhi, or whoever they came to see had been rested for no medical reason whatsoever. TV ratings dropped, ticket sales suffered, the league's credibility took a hit. Something had to change. But here's the question nobody in the league office is answering. Did the solution end up being more dangerous than the problem itself? Think about this. If this rule had existed in previous seasons, some of the most iconic MVP caliber performances in recent memory would have been wiped from contention. Kevin Durant in his prime, Stephen Curry in his shooting prime, Kawhi Leonard during his Raptors championship run. These players wouldn't have been disqualified because they played poorly. They would have been disqualified simply because they didn't play enough games. And that brings us directly to the next stop. Now let's talk about what this rule actually looks like in the real world right now this season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is living this pressure in real time. SGA is, by nearly every statistical measure, one of the most dominant players the NBA has seen in years. His scoring numbers are elite. His efficiency is remarkable. Every major analyst has him locked in as the frontrunner to win back-to-back MVP awards. But here's the problem that doesn't show up in the highlight reels. He's already missed 11 games this season due to an abdominal injury. 11 games sitting on the sideline. Do the math with me. The rule requires 65 games out of 82. He's already burned through 11 absences. That means for the rest of the entire season, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander can afford to miss exactly 6 more games. 6. If he misses a 7th, doesn't matter if it's a torn muscle, a sprained ankle, or just the flu, he's out of MVP contention entirely. No exceptions, no appeals, no consideration of how brilliantly he plays in the games he does appear in. And SGA isn't the only one walking this tightrope. Nikola Jokic, the 3-time MVP who completely redefined what a center can be in the modern NBA, carries physical wear that accumulates more with every passing season. Luka Doncic, now adjusting to life with the Los Angeles Lakers, has a well-documented history of muscle strains and ankle issues that make any full season something of a gamble. And Victor Wembanyama, the French phenomenon that many already consider the future face of the entire league, is still developing the physical infrastructure needed to sustain a grueling 82-game professional season. All 4 of them, in different ways, are racing against the same clock. Not against each other's stat lines, against a number, 65, and as we're about to find out, that number has a very specific dollar value attached to it. This is where the conversation shifts from basketball to money, and the numbers are staggering. In today's NBA, individual awards aren't just trophies and recognition, they are financial triggers. contract clauses that activate massive pay increases, extensions, and what the league calls the Supermax, the largest contract the collective bargaining agreement allows a player to sign. A player who wins MVP or earns a spot on the All-NBA first team can secure a contract extension worth anywhere from $60 to over $100 million more than a player who didn't reach those milestones. Not thousands, not a few extra million. We're talking about a gap of potentially 9 figures between a player who qualifies and one who falls just short because of games missed. Now put yourself in that athlete's position. You've dedicated your entire life to this sport. Early mornings, late nights, years away from family, surgeries, rehab, sacrifice at every level. And when you finally arrive at the moment where your talent is undeniable, when your performances speak louder than any argument, one bad landing, one torn ligament, one wrong step at the wrong time can erase a life-changing amount of money. That is the world the 65-game rule created. The MVP race is no longer purely about who plays the best basketball. It's about who stays available, who can outlast the schedule. Who can push through discomfort, push through minor injuries, push through the kind of physical warnings that doctors will tell you off the record that athletes probably shouldn't be ignoring. Talent still matters enormously. Performance still drives the conversation. But now there's a third dimension, physical endurance. And that endurance has a direct financial value that can define the entire economic legacy of an athlete's career. Now we get to the part that changes everything. The layer of this story that the league's official press releases don't address. On the surface, the 65-game rule is about protecting the fans' experience and punishing teams that abuse rest policies. But underneath that justification sits a far more complex reality, one worth examining carefully. This rule, in practice, does something very specific. It inflates the perceived value of the MVP award. When you require a player to appear in nearly 80% of games to even be eligible, you're sending a message to the market. This title only belongs to someone who truly showed up. You're engineering scarcity around the award. You're making it harder to win, which in theory makes it more prestigious. But in doing so, you're also bearing the real cost of that requirement. Because what the rule actually produces isn't a fairer competition. It creates a form of forced commitment. An invisible financial chain that ties the league's most valuable players to an exhausting schedule, under constant threat of losing life-altering money if their body fails them at the wrong moment. Think about the position this puts players in. A team's medical staff recommends rest for a star player, not because he's seriously injured, but because smart load management would reduce the risk of a more serious injury down the road. That's just science. That's just sports medicine. But the player knows that missing one more game pushes him closer to the threshold. And beyond that threshold sits a contract worth tens of millions of dollars more. So he plays, because the financial consequences of sitting out are simply too large to ignore. Who is actually protecting that athlete? The league built a structure where the pursuit of individual glory is inseparable from the ability to endure a physical marathon. And that marathon carries real consequences for long-term health. The kind of consequences that show up not in this season's box scores, but years down the road. There's another dimension here that rarely gets discussed openly. A league where its biggest stars play more games is a league with higher TV ratings, stronger gate revenues, better sponsorship deals, and a more valuable broadcast product. The rule that was sold as a gift to the fans also happens to serve the financial interests of every franchise owner, every television partner, and the league office itself. The MVP award, which should be the purest celebration of individual excellence, has become something more layered. It's now a signal that simultaneously rewards the player, validates the league's product, and reinforces the financial ecosystem that makes the NBA one of the most valuable sports properties on Earth. And the players are paying for all of that with their bodies, game after game after game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander understands this. Jokic understands this. Wembanyama is about to learn it. And every time any one of them steps onto that court with something that doesn't feel quite right and decides to play through it anyway, there are tens of millions of dollars quietly influencing that decision. The trap is set, and the real question isn't who wins the MVP. It's who's actually in control, the player or the system built around him. So where does that leave us? This rule fundamentally changed what it means to be an MVP in the NBA. The award that was always supposed to crown the best player in the league now carries a second meaning, the player who survived the season. And I want to know what you think. Is the NBA actually protecting the integrity of its sport? Or is it engineering the value of its biggest stars in a way that serves the league more than it serves the athletes? Is it fair that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander could be eliminated from MVP contention and potentially lose tens of millions in contract value simply because his body broke down at the wrong time of year? Or is the 65-game threshold a necessary standard that gives the award genuine meaning? Drop your take in the comments. This is exactly the kind of conversation this channel exists for, as going past the highlights, past the official statements, and into the mechanics of how this sport actually operates. If this video made you see the MVP race differently, share it with someone who follows the NBA. They need to know about this. Subscribe so you don't miss what we break down next. See you in the next one.